David, I know from you the information about Excalibur ship.
Yes.
Tell me, what the mission of this ship was?
Okay. It had two purposes. The first was to train what was called the deck project force. And that was for the people to learn how to handle mess and how to take care of things on a ship, and to do the basic hatting to get into the Sea Org. That was their basic training. Like in a regular org, you have the staff statuses, like staff status 0, staff status 1, staff status 2, and then you're a permanent staff member. In the Sea Org, it was product 0 was the first step. Then product 1, you learned how to actually navigate the ship and run everything on the ship.
Okay, tell me when it started. What the date?
Okay, in 1970, we first saw the Sea Org coming to the missions, and they had like kind of a basic uniform, like a blue jacket with some fur on their collar and maybe a hat. It wasn't as sophisticated as it was later. And they came into the port of San Diego, and they had like an open house. And it was a very narrow ship, but long. And it was called a submarine chaser. Because in the World War II, it used to chase after submarines. It was like narrow but fast. And that was a basic training ship, the Boulevard. But it didn't hold very many people.
About how many long meters?
It was like about 110 feet long. That would be, what, 35 meters? Or
not big, not
no, no, it wasn't too big. But then, as the Sea Org was expanding, they needed a bigger training because there was more Sea Org, and they needed to train them on the Product 0 and Product 1 so they could go back and do missions and go to the different orgs and around the country. So they bought the Excalibur. And the Excalibur was quite a bigger ship. It was about, I would say, about 5 times as big as the Boulevard. And at that time, the Boulevard wasn't running, and so it was docked next to the Excalibur. And every time we had to go out to sea, we had to pull the Boulevard by hand onto the pier and tie it up.
Okay, it's what, 1969?
No, this was 1970 to 1970. Actually, the Excalibur got decommissioned or out of service in 1975. It no longer, they sold it as junk.
It means about 5 years.
Yeah. Right. And then, so all the people transferred from the ship to land, and then they, instead of doing Product 0, which was the deck project force, they did the Estates EPF, which is Estates Project Force. Estates are like the grounds of the buildings, the building itself, like painting, gardening, working, mess work. But on the ship, you actually worked on the ship. You actually took the rust off the ship, painted the ship with the heavy paints, and you did mess drills on the ship.
Okay, how many years you was in?
Oh no, I wasn't years. I was a very short time.
Very short.
Yeah, because back then you had 10 days to finish your Product 0. And if not, you were out like that.
Very intensively.
Yeah. And so in the 1 week I was there, I had 19 and a half hours of auditing, and I finished 4 courses. But that wasn't fast enough.
Very fast.
That wasn't fast enough for the Sea Org back then. They had very high standards back then. And then later on, when it came to land, people were on this Product 0 for 5 months, and they didn't get rid of them.
Yeah, tell me, who was a captain of Excalibur?
Alan Long.
Alan Long. And what happened with him?
He actually later started auditing outside of the church for money, and he was like an entrepreneur, or like the free zone. He left the church and he started auditing people outside of the org.
Yeah. Okay. And you study at this ship, and later, what you do later?
Yes. Well, let me just tell you about the ship.
Yeah.
So when I was on the ship, that little ship, the Excalibur, was producing from 600 to 700 hours of auditing every week. That's how big their HGC was, their guidance center, where they would audit the new Sea Org members.
How many auditors?
There was only about 8 auditors. And so it was a very high production. So I had my full integrity processing, or they now call them confessionals. I had the confessionals on the 8 dynamics in 19 and a half hours. And then, so I got all my overts and withholds cleaned up, and I was shiny, and I wasn't withholding anymore, and I was ready to reach. And Elrich says on the Welcome to the Sea Org tapes, he says, when you have staff members with overts, they're like little islands, and they individuate, and they're afraid to knock on the door, or they're afraid to speak up to their executive. And when you get off all your overts and withholds, now you can start reaching and impinging. So when I went back to the org, a month and a half later, I did from grade 0 to grade 4. Because my reach was really big in Scientology then. And then a month later, I did power processing.
And what can you say about achievements on these levels, on grades and near this?
Yeah, well, first of all, when you get cleaned up like on the Excalibur, you're like clean as a whistle. You're ready to fly. And then, that power I went right to attack the case, and I did grade 0 to 4 in 1 month. And that was auditing 7 days a week. And I was co-auditing. And on staff at the same time. So it was a lot of randomity. So then I was like a shiny product on the grades, and then I went up and I did my Power and Power Plus auditing at the American St. Hill organization. And that was really good, the Power.
And how old you was?
I was 18 at the time. And then by the time I got on OT3, I was 19. So I was on staff this whole time while going through the grades and Dianetics and everything, and onto OT3, all in a period of 3 years, from 16 to 19.
Yeah, and after this study and auditing on grades, what next?
I was a staff member for 9 years. I worked on org staff. Well, first of all, it was mission staff, and then my mission turned into an org.
Which the city?
This was San Diego, California.
Mm-hmm. Good. And tell me, you in San Diego saw the Captain Bill, right?
Yes. So Captain Bill.
Tell me.
Okay. There was a mission. It was two missions. One was for the CF project, or the central files of the org. And 2 was there was this event that they wanted to get new people into the org. So Captain Bill came down with a number of Sea Org members with him Arthur Hubbard, Suzette Hubbard, some other missionaries, I don't remember their name, and then Captain Bill, he had like a what we call a crew cut. It was like a flat hair top cut on the top. Big guy. He was like maybe 6 inches taller than me. Very heavy guy. And he had a deep voice. And my brother and I hung out with him and asked him questions and about the Sea Org stuff. And he was very personable.
And tell me, he was in Sea Org form, suit? Or
he came down, he had a leather jacket and, you know, boots.
Enough simple.
And, you know, and then he had his bars, captain bars.
Okay.
Yeah.
With captain.
He rode down on a BMW motorcycle.
But that was uniform or what it looks like?
Well, no, when he took off his motorcycle, yeah, he had the captain bars and the yellow rope on his, and he looked really sharp.
Yeah, yeah. And he looks like what you say he looks like.
I thought he was going to be very hard to approach and very, you know, snobbish, you know, because he was so high up. But when he says, "Come here, boys, let me talk to you," and he goes, "How are you doing?" You know, and he shook our hand, and we had a good comm cycle with him. And so my brother and I were very happy talking to him.
And he was one on the motorcycle come to
yes
org.
Yeah, I saw him get off his motorcycle right in front of the org, and so we talked to him several times, but not as close friends or anything, but just as curious staff members. You know, hey, he's Captain Bill. You know, there's only 2 captains in the Sea Org, Mary Sue and Bill Robertson.
And tell me, that was one time, 1973 or?
That was later in 1973. That was almost 74 when he came down.
74. That was one time or later?
No, that's the one and only time I saw him. Yeah, only in San Diego.
Later, no.
No. And I used to read policies by his wife, bulletins and policies that she wrote in the 60s by Lieutenant Commander Joan Robertson. And then I realized that he was married to Joan Robertson, and then he was now Captain Bill, you know, and he rose up the ranks. So.
Great.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
And tell me, until which date you was in charge of Scientology, and what the reason you left it? This is very important.
So I got in October 1970. I was 16, and so from 1970 to 1995, I was studying or auditing every day for all that time.
25 years?
Yes. And I did the briefing course, and I was on staff for a number of years, and but then everything started changing in 1995. There was no auditing happening I was at the American Saint Hill organization. And I want to go back just a little bit. In 1975 and 1976, the American Saint Hill organization had 2,400 students. It was a very powerful org. By 1995, there was nobody on the briefing course. Not one person. I was the last student auditing. I was the only student auditing in the entire org.
It means during what the time the statistics slowed down?
It started slowing down in the 80s, in the late 70s, 80s. And then we had a really powerful supervisor come back to ASHO. And she got from these horrible statistics, she got up to 400 students on the briefing course. And then she got declared SP.
Which the date of this?
That was like 1986 or 7.
Okay, that was attempt to improve statistics and improve technology, but they suppress it.
Yeah, they suppressed her, they squashed her right out of existence. Yeah, because she was too powerful. They didn't like her. And all the students said, if she's an SP, I must be a worse SP because she is so good. And they all knew, basically, deep in their heart, that she wasn't an SP. And it was like a wrong indication to the whole group when she got declared.
Okay, and you left the church in 1995.
Yeah, 1995.
Yeah, and what happened later?
Oh, after we got out?
Yeah, you left, and you leave as...
Okay, so we left, but we weren't declared suppressive, and so we still had Scientology friends, and actually the org even sent us PCs to handle in ethics from ASHO, the American St. Hill org. They would send us sometimes people to audit because they still trusted us. And then it was just somehow over the years, they just sent a plain letter one day to my wife, you're declared suppressive person.
It took 10 years.
It took like 10 years for them to actually send it.
And later you come to free zone, right?
Yes. Yeah, well, at first I didn't even know about a free zone or anything happening, and it was very difficult. People would get attacked very hard by the church and sued, and the people were scared to do anything.
And when you first time heard about free zone?
It was about 9 years after I got out. I heard that there was auditors auditing.
2004, right?
Yeah, 2004.
2000.
And so it was like from 1992 until 2004, I didn't get any auditing. I finished OT8 in 1992. And then so finally in 2004, I heard about this auditor and I got L11 in the free zone. And some other.
What you feel when you...
Also, you also redo OT8.
Yes, I was going to get to that. And so, and then another thing, at the same time I did L11, then I got training on the OT8 in the free zone, which was much more powerful than the OT8 I did on the ship.
You mean this is original new OT8 by LRH or Excalibur?
No, this is okay. I did the OT8 in the church on the Freewind ship.
Yeah.
Down in by Columbia.
In 70s.
No, I did that in 1992.
1992.
Yeah, I finished OT8. Then in the free zone in 2004, I did another version of OT8.
Okay.
I don't know whose version, LRH's version, or where exactly.
Maybe this was original OT8.
It could very well may be the original OT8.
Without changes of...
Yeah, but it wasn't anything like the OT8 I did on the ship. It's completely different. It's like the difference between Russia and the United States. They're different.
This is incredible.
Yeah. Totally different processes.
And tell me about achievements. This is very different.
Yes. So in 1992, I got very good wins, and I had a very good understanding of myself as a being. But the OT8 I did in 2004, I had a win when I spotted something that my body cried for about 2 hours. Just tears going down and down. The TA just went around the dial. I was so stunned. And the universe shifted so big around me, I couldn't even talk. So I had a very, very big win on the OT8 I did in 2004. It's very powerful technology.
Great. And who gives you this OT level?
Okay, at that time it was Pierre Ethier.
From Canada, class
Yes,
12.
yes. Yeah, and I don't know where he got the materials from or how he obtained them, but he had his ways. Yeah.
He had, I think, very good source.
Yes.
Because he was auditor class 12.
Right, and he was at the Flag Land Base for many years, and he audited a lot of the OT8's reviews and things like that.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. And after this date, after 2004, what happening? What you start to do something new in life, or what happened?
Yeah, well, for a number of years after that, well, my wife was always auditing, and then I took on PCs for about 2 to 3 years, 5 nights a week. I was auditing 2 PCs at a time, and
Yeah.
but yeah, and then it was a number of years after that when the first time I had like a little dip in my case, and then I had a friend that was that I knew from San Diego in 1970. He was a NOTS auditor on the Free Winds, and he's out of the Sea Org now. And then he took care of me and did a review on me, which was very good.
Okay. And during last 10 years, did you provided some auditing, some training to people? What you do?
Yeah,
What you
we've
did?
always worked. I've always worked with my wife in the field practice. I do the exams, the ethics, the false data stripping, and then I had the PCs of my own. And then sometimes I like my last PC was a guy that was a student with me on the OT7 course, and he now has Parkinson's disease. And I did a full assist rundown on him. That was my last auditing that I did. That was about a year ago.
Okay. And help it to this?
Yeah, it's a very, very severe disease. But you know, any little win or big win, when you are in a condition like that, you feel relief as a being, because the body is degraded, but the being was still there looking at me, you know, and I could see him. It wasn't, you know, we weren't dealing with his body, we were dealing with him.
Yeah.
So.
It's very important that you used technology and not forget, not drop this, and give new generation.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Because young people need to have some part of your experience.
Absolutely.
Okay, and very nice to see you here in Moscow, and thank you for
Yes.
this interview.
Thank you for the opportunity to give it.
Yeah. About this information about Excalibur ship, about Captain Bill.
Yes.
This is incredible.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Very good.
Okay.